this is the Provoked Prawn, and here I'm comparing two fantastic premium Tenkeyless keyboards, the Logitech G915 TKL and the Razer DeathStalker V2 Pro Tenkeyless. These are two wireless Tenkeyless compact keyboards with small form factor and a number of interesting highlights. They're both premium flagship devices with a price tag to match, and links to all the things you need to know are in the description, so you can find out the price in your region. But in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about the features, specs, and other things about them, what I like and don't like about each, and the highlights. Now, I've been using the white version of the G915 TKL for quite some time, and I was pretty excited to see Razer dropping a Tenkeyless keyboard with a similar low-profile design and some interesting highlights. You'll see that both these keyboards, for example, have reasonable battery life, with Razer claiming up to 50 hours of battery life and Logitech 40, although that depends on whether you're using the RGB lighting that you can see, and more on that in the description, as well as in the videos that are covered separately on both of these that I'll link to as well. So if you want to find out more about each of them, please check out the reviews because they go into a lot more depth, and I'll link those videos down below. But as you'll see from these clips, they're quite comparable. You can see the G915 TKL here, a very premium keyboard, which on the underside has a little dock for its USB dongle and flippable feet to adjust the height of it. You also see a brushed aluminium finish on the back plate that makes it stand out and looks really nice, whereas the Razer keyboard is a little bit more stealthy. It does have an aluminium back plate, but it doesn't have that brushed finish of it, and it is a bit more subtle in its design, a little bit more stealthy, but you can see the RGB lighting's really nice. It also has a bit more of a swollen back where the battery's stored, and you can get up to like 200 hours of battery life if you turn the RGB lighting off, apparently. On the underside, you'll also find a dock for the dongle. So this is a 2.4 gigahertz dongle from Razer. They both have 2.4 gigahertz. They both have Bluetooth connectivity. And it's worth noting that, although the Razer has 3 Bluetooth 5.0 profiles that you can connect, and I'll show you the button to change between that a little bit later, you both see that they have flippable feet as well. Now, there are some interesting things about these keyboards that isn't immediately obvious from the outside of them, even if you're comparing them side by side. Obviously, aesthetically, they're ever so slightly different. The Logitech has its G logo in the top left with RGB lighting on it, and you'll notice it has some extra buttons that the Razer keyboard doesn't, which makes the Razer a little bit more compact. There's not much in it. It's a little bit smaller from top to bottom, for example, but not necessarily side to side. It is a little bit fatter, sits a little bit higher off the desk because of that, as you'll see in a minute from shots there. And you'll also notice that there's some differences in the connectivity. The Logitech keyboard uses a detachable micro USB charging cable, and the Razer uses USB-C, which will please many people. On the right-hand side of the keyboard, you'll also notice that there's dedicated media playback buttons, volume wheels, and other things that I'll go into in a bit more depth later on. And Razer has some settings buried in other keys as well. And it's worth noting that Razer also has HyperShift technology, which allows you to add a secondary layer of actions within Synapse with the software that comes with the keyboard, which means that you can program a lot more, and that makes it interesting in a number of ways, whereas the Logitech is a little bit more limited. Now, if you pop off the keycaps, here comes the other thing that's interesting about this. So the Logitech G915 TKL in black seen here comes with the GL clicky switches, and the Razer DeathStalker V2 Pro uses Razer's optical switches. These are low-profile optical linear switches, and there's a couple of differences here. First of all, the Razer uses optical switches, whereas the Logitech does not. Also, Razer has some differences in specs. So, for example, you get 1.2mm actuation with the Razer versus the 1.5 with the Logitech. So it's faster to actuate, has a shorter travel distance before it actuates, which means a very gentle press will activate it. Also, it uses a light beam to track the press. So when you press it, it breaks that light beam. And this actually has some implications. First of all, it means the key switches are guaranteed up to 70 million clicks. Less chance that they'll wear down over time versus mechanical switches and traditional switches. And that means that they'll hold up longer, and also it should track more accurately and be more responsive. When you pop the keycaps off, you'll notice a slight difference between these two keycaps. They have a different sort of style and finish to them. There's a few things of note here, first of which is they both have an ABS finish on them, and they're both quite similar, and I did find over time that both keyboards do pick up oils from your fingers and such. I especially found this a problem, and I did an in-depth review of the G915 TKL after a year worth of use and how dirty that got. So check that out, linked in the description as well. But you can see how thin the keycaps are. These are low profile keycaps. They also have quite what looks like flimsy connections, both of them, to go onto the key switches. The difference with the Razer keyboard is it has that sort of traditional crosshatch in the middle, like a Cherry MX style, which I think means it will probably be more resilient over time. However, I will say that I haven't had any problems with the G915. My version has been the daily driver, the white one that I've had of this. I haven't had any issues with those keycaps breaking over time. They are more resilient than they look. But you can see the difference between them. It's worth noting that both sort of styles, you won't really be able to buy aftermarket keycaps. I've not managed to find any low-profile keycaps that would fit on a keyboard like this. So if you're buying this sort of keyboard, it makes it more difficult to replace the keycaps if you wanted to customize the look. You can see when we look at it like this, that the Razer has etching on all the lettering. So even the secondary layer, for example, the $sign, £sign, @ things like that, all have the etching cut out of them so that the RGB shines through, whereas on the Logitech you can see some of them are white rather than letting the RGB come through there. So there's some minor differences, very subtle differences in the design of each of them and the features and specs of them as well. And check out all the specs, link in the description if you want to find out more. And you'll see that there are some subtle things again. For example, if you press and hold the function button and the end button on the Razer keyboard, the 4 little LEDs down here give you an indication of how much battery life you have left. On the G915, you have a little battery indicator as well, which changes from green to red and orange when you need to plug it in for charge. The G915 TKL also has some rubberized buttons for media playback, so play, pause, skip, mute, and it has a very subtle volume wheel as well, whereas Razer's gone for this single multi-action button and a very small volume wheel, and the volume wheel can be pushed in on the Razer keyboard to mute it, and then rolled up and down to adjust the volume, and then the multi-action button can be pressed to pause and play, double press to skip, and triple press to rewind. So it does have some of the same convenience in it, but I actually prefer the Logitech one. You have those same sort of rubber buttons on the left-hand side on the Logitech as well. You can see there's a button to switch between Wi-Fi and Bluetooth to turn on game mode, which disables your Windows key, for example, and one button to adjust the brightness as well. I think that's really convenient and easy to do and really easy to use. And on the Razer, you can see that you have a switch to switch between 2.4 and Bluetooth on the rear, as well as those 1, 2, 3 buttons, which will switch between the 3 different Bluetooth profiles on the keyboard. So you can actually connect up to multiple different Bluetooth devices and pair them with them as well. So the Logitech keyboard doesn't have as much flexibility with Bluetooth. It only has one connection, but I don't think that's really a problem. I also really like the G915 TKL for a number of reasons, one of which is the premium finish on it. It has a really nice brushed aluminium finish that looks really good, and you can see from these shots, in my opinion, it's the better looking keyboard. The RGB lighting is also very comparable with both of them. I will say that the Razer one perhaps has a bit more programmability in what you can do with it, and overall is very nice. Now, which of these keyboards is my favorite? Neither. The G915 TKL in white is my preference versus the black one. I think it's a nicer looking keyboard. It also has different switches, and I've done a video to compare the two and why the white one is better than the black one, and I'll link to that in the description as well. But perhaps Razer will release a white one in the near future, but you can see with the white and black next to each other, the white one just looks a lot better. However, Razer does have the optical switches, which certainly gives it an advantage, and it is a nice experience. They're both great gaming keyboards. Now, stick around to hear a sound test for a comparison between the two, and if you want to hear more of that, be sure to check out the separate video linked in the description. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Thanks for watching.